You are whole just as you are. You don't need their blessings and approval. Ladies and gentlemen, gals, guys, everybody in the audience, welcome in to the Blue Collar Psychiatrist. Today, we're going to talk about a very important issue. It's called the false premise. What is a premise? A premise is an assumption. And sometimes assumptions are not true. In my particular case, as you know from previous videos, I grew up without much money in the household. And I always looked upon those people who had wealth with some envy, I must admit, and said they must have everything going for them. Why not me? And around the age of adolescence, in that period of time, of course, I became aware of dating and women. And I noticed that I was attracted to certain women, but many of these women came from wealthy families. You see, after having been put down for many years by those same very families, my false assumption was, my false premise was, that if I could only ask one of those women from a wealthy family on a date, or better yet even, have a relationship, then I too would be lifted to the lofty heights of social excellence. Unfortunately, I found out that this was a false premise. You see, the people of wealth, at least in that community and probably other communities, do not want their daughters or sons intermingling and having relationships with people whom they consider of a lower class. They don't want their gene pool contaminated by those they consider of a lower class. And yet, I did not catch on right away. And besides, it's human nature to want what you can't have. You want what is denied you. It seems to explode in value because you can't have it. You're told in so many ways, you're not good enough. You can't have the prize. But I didn't realize it right away. And so I would call these women or try to talk to them, and they barely even answered me in person. And when I tried to call them, they were never home. I became upset and angry. But finally I understood the lay of the land, shall we say. I understood this class system, and that's exactly what it was in my situation and probably other situations, not only around this country, but around the world. That classes don't mix. The ones who are at the high level do not want their precious children intermingling with those whom they consider of a lower class. And that would have been me. Now, can you imagine going through life not understanding and realizing what was going on, and that if I would have continued to pursue this fruitless venture of trying to lift myself up by being accepted by those of lofty heights, that I too would become socially acceptable. But it's not to be, because those who consider themselves of the highest order will never allow it. They will never allow their offspring to mingle with those who they consider lower. Now here comes one of my favorite topics, and you can see this very, very clearly. Wasting more and more time. There it is. Time. Wasting more and more time trying to pursue in vain these women of wealth was not only a waste of time, but it was actually detrimental to me to constantly be rejected by those who thought they were better. Can you imagine the sense of frustration and despair, not only as you go through life and not understanding how the world really works, but can you imagine going through life only to come near the end of your time on this earth and realize that you had been living under a false premise? The premise of the promise of being accepted into the high orders, to the high ranks of human existence. Can you imagine what it would feel like to realize that all of your assumptions about this whole issue were wrong, were false, and would never be? Luckily, I wised up along the way with the help of some other people and also my own eyes and ears. And I realized that what I wanted was never going to happen. But then I also saw it for what it was, that these people were very, very, very envious of their positions, and they would not allow anybody else to come in to the holiest of places, those with money. Can you imagine the realization that I had when my dream turned into a nightmare, or would have turned into a nightmare had I been, quote, accepted into a higher level? Because we would have nothing in common. It would have exploded. It would have exploded in anger, perhaps. It would have exploded because the families would immediately say, no, you can't see that person. I will tell you that this dream, which was generated by the false premise that I created, this dream would have quickly turned into a nightmare. And so my question is this: has this happened to you? I'm sure some people in this audience can identify with it. That they too have been excluded because they didn't have the financial resources that other people did. Doesn't feel too good. But I will say to you this: when you finally understand, when you finally come to the realization of what is going on, then what you do is flip it, like some of the martial arts do when they use the opponent's momentum against them. And so what I did was say, okay, I knew I had the brain power to become a doctor. And sometimes it would get tough, but then I would say to myself, you know, this is your chance, because success is the best revenge. And I do believe in revenge, but not violent revenge. I actually was asked a question by one of these so-called people who were at the high levels. In fact, it was a family member, of all things. And they said to me, well, where did you get all those brains? That is, when I was going to medical school. But it was as if the premise, their false premise, was that I did not deserve to become a doctor because they had me pigeonholed into a lower level, perhaps a menial worker. They couldn't stand it. They couldn't understand it. And you know what I say? Too bad. Love it and live it, because that is who I was going to be. A doctor. And that's the way you have to handle this. You turn it around, you flip it like jiu-jitsu, and you use the momentum, this negative momentum from these jealous people against them. And then go on to success. You see, happiness and wealth of your own is the success. And you go on your way. Now, I don't think about this topic every day, but in putting together this video, there is no way that I could not remember some of the things that happened to me many, many, many years ago. It's always there, never quite leaves your mind, but thankfully we don't think about it on a daily basis. So I ask you this: have you been in a similar situation as I was? Being put down by people of money, being excluded by people of money, and feeling bad about yourself, and feeling under a false premise that if only you could do X, Y, and Z, that you would be accepted and that everything would be all right. That is a bald-faced lie. You better get yourself out of that way of thinking, because they will never accept you, as they would never accept me. So what you do, as I said once again, without being redundant, is to flip it and go after everything that you want within your realm of expertise, within your realm of God-given gifts, and then you become a success in whatever field you choose, and you become a whole person, happy, not relying on those people to give you what you already have, and that is yourself. You are whole just as you are. You don't need their blessings and approval to become the best person that you can ever be. Remember this. Remember this lesson. Do not waste time on trying to do things that you cannot do or are not allowed to do. The colossal waste of time. Don't do it. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, I remind you, drink and drink abundantly from the fountain of life. See you next time. Wait! I recommend that you view my video, Sexual Market Value. In this video, you will get more understanding of the topic that we just discussed today.